Hello and welcome back to the channel, and thank you for joining me on another of my interview series. These are growing all the time with more and more fascinating and interesting people. Today I'm talking to Neil Petrie, who is a former military officer, a businessman, and somebody who is focusing on direct democracy, a hybrid democracy in fact. Neil, welcome to the show.
Richard, thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
I was very intrigued by the hybrid bit. You know, we all think of democracy that we're supposed to vote for something, and then we have the MPs representing us and going off, and then sometimes that's not actually happening, and we kind of see a lot of that at the moment, where you wonder what state democracy is really in. But there's lots of different versions of it. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us a bit about the book that you're writing, which is called One Vote Away, coming out very soon, and basically about the direct democracy movement.
Right, well, thanks again. As I said, as you said, my background, I was military intelligence. I was in the army for 16 years. I went to Sandhurst in 1981, and I retired in 97. And then I went into working really in the security industry, which is not that unusual for ex-military. I was all over Central Asia and the Middle East, and basically set up with some friends out in the Middle East, one or two things out there, and came back to UK. My main drive has been over the years to look at the direct democracy as the opportunity for us to take our democracy on to the next level. I'm sure most of your viewers, like me, not happy at all with the party system, and so I've been looking at that for many years, and wanted to put it into words. So put a book out there to explain to people the options that there are. And as you said, I'm glad you picked up on the hybrid bit there, Richard. I think it's something that we don't realise. Something people might say that in Switzerland they've got direct democracy, but in fact it's a combination. So they have a hybrid, and there's the ancient Greeks had direct democracy, and people might be aware of that, and the Romans too, where you voted for every single law, and everyone had to vote. And in fact, they used to come out with a stick and beat people to go and vote.
Oh, charming.
Exactly. So you were made to vote, and they had a lot of juries, 500 people on their juries for certain things. So it was a very different system to ours, all the Swiss. So what the Swiss did was to keep parties and also add on the referendum as a check. This was back in 1848. Okay, this is when they started it. But the hybrid bit is the fact that you keep the party, so you've got people to do like the day-to-day grind in Parliament, etc. And if you want to support a particular side of the argument, there's a party for you. But every time they put a law out, there is the option to take a vote on it.
So from the public.
From the public. So you can.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, so we've got these things like 15-minute cities or policy to head towards net zero that are clearly a lot of people are not very happy about. In that scenario, something as major as those things, the people would actually have a legitimate say to say yes or no whether they like the idea.
Oh, absolutely. This is the whole point of the hybrid.
Right.
You've got, the politicians themselves also have to look very carefully at what they are going to put out before they put it out, because they know there is this hurdle where the public, if they can gather enough support, get enough signatures, for instance, in Switzerland, it's 50,000 signatures.
Oh, right.
But say for UK, you'd maybe have 400, 500,000 would be the hurdle. But if you say 500,000 signatures, you would then be able to get the referendum. And it's a first past the post referendum, and that's it. So it's slightly more technical than that, you can amend the law. But basically, if you don't like it as a people, you have the final say on it. It's like a quality control check as the cars going out of the factory. As the laws coming out of Parliament, before it would go to the King for his assent, it would be signed off by the people, or they wouldn't bother.
Yeah,
Because the other,
so it's kind of a step before, as you just said there, before the royal assent, because at the moment we've only going by if the king doesn't like it,
correct.
and it's like, well, if the king thinks, oh no, this will be all right, we'll go to net zero because I have an agenda of, green planet and this, that, and the other, and it all sounds good to me. But the people might say, hold on a minute, it's our lives you're talking about, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, I think it does. I think most people, when they understand how it might work and how it worked for them, rather than for us and people, rather than for the parties, which are controlled obviously by the whips, and the whips are controlled by the party backers in the end. So you have that oligarchy really that runs each party. That's their natural way of the world, really, for
Yeah.
thousands of years. So the Swiss kicked over the traces, really, and changed things. And they didn't just do it with referendums, they allowed people the initiative as well. So 1848, they came in with the referendum, but it was just on matters to do with their constitution. They had a new constitution, 1848. It was a year after their civil war. They had a little civil war, 1847. About 100 people got killed. It was a minor civil war, but
Right.
they thought about it and they came up with this idea. Let's just, let's
So,
just.
I'm just trying to think because what I'm trying to get at is something had happened to make them want to change the system. And what was it like before then? Was it more tyrannical or dictatorship or like we have today?
It was similar, It was. They had basically there are 26 cantons now, like big counties, and so that's what they had. And they had less at that point, but they've become 26 now. There's about 20 odd. But each canton was split. You'd have maybe the city in the canton and the rural area. And the rural area, thought differently to the city. And the cities were run by, usual, the money men. And they were ruthless, they were. And so the Swiss had a lot of peasant wars, as it were, right through the 17th century and 18th century. There's about 10 that I've looked at. So it wasn't all, the Swiss were all, sweetness and light. Not at all.
No.
So you had the usual thing of the elite and the oligarchy crushing the peasants and their, what would be a normal voter today.
How did they get to the point where they were able then to change the system? Because I guess that's what we would be looking at now is, I'm sure the MPs and the Parliament and the Cabinet particularly who are enjoying this incredible amount of power that they have, especially over the COVID times when they could tell people to stay inside and be as dictatorial as they are. How did they get to that point where they could then say, actually, new system, sorry guys, we're going to do this?
Well, Napoleon invaded them, so the early 1800s, and of course he brought with him all of the revolutionary equality stuff.
Right.
So, that had an effect on the politics. They were subjugated, but he created what is the Helvetica, the Helvetic Confederation. So that's why you see CH. It's a Confederation Helvetica.
Ah, right, okay.
So it's not Switzerland, it's a Helvetica, a confederation. And so this confederation of cantons saw the light, as it were, under Napoleon, you might say, not all of them, but enough of them to make those changes over the next 20, 30, 40 years. But there were Catholic and Protestant differences, so this is what the Civil War was about. And they had other issues with regards to, the languages, and also different countries around them that had a say in some of the cantons, Germany, Austria, etc. So there were these differences, but they realised, over this kind of period after Napoleon, that it's best to not really get involved in too many fracas. But then they had their own little ones spilled over because of the Catholics basically rebelling against the Protestant element. But they obviously decided after what they'd seen the previous 50 years, enough of that. Let's sort this out, and we'll listen to the other people, and we'll create this new confederation with a new constitution, which they put together in 1848. And what was significant was they said, constitution can only be changed when you have all of the cantons and all of the people voting on it. So basically, that's what implemented the referendums in Switzerland.
Right.
So you still had the parties, but you had this referendum was introduced at that point, and it's been developing ever since 1848. And I think it was 1891 they brought in the initiative, which is where, you know, you as a citizen, Richard, you could say, I don't want this 15-minute city in Rome. And if you gathered enough signatures, in Switzerland it's double the number that you need for a referendum, but so it's 100,000.
Right.
So you might need 800 or 800,000 or 1 million here in Britain. And so that's how they changed their country, okay? And they had basically they eradicated obviously all these peasant wars. They were already a neutral country before they changed the constitution, and they were quite wealthy at that point already because they'd taken in a lot of the Huguenots from France. They had some industries going, chocolate, of course, as you all well know.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah, as we all do. Yeah, and over the last century, they've just kept tweaking the system, and the constitution can be changed very easily, but you just need to have a vote on it. So
Right.
you have to there is mandatory referendums on constitutional changes. Okay, so that's how they operate, and you know it's not all right, it's not all left, it's very consensual. So people come together, work out what's best, and because they've got to get it through the referendum anyway, they know that. And,
Did you in your stuff you sent me? You implied that if the people wanted a different rule or wanted to suggest a rule, they could suggest it from the bottom up, that would then be debated and what have you, and then go, rather than it's only what the MPs, you know, here are the rules we want to put forward. But you know, people like me could come up with I could say I want to be able to have the freedom to cycle over everybody's front garden. And, you know, people may say, well, yeah, actually, it's quite a nice idea, but most people might say that's actually a ridiculous idea, of course. But I would have the right to put that up. Is that right?
that's correct, pretty much. You know, so there are lots of things that you could, put forward, and if you can get the people to back you, then you'll get the referendum. So they generally fail those initiatives, okay, but they are it's only about 10-20% pass, but they do pass.
Yeah.
And about I think it's about 30-40% or more of the referendums, they get the law kicked out, or changed.
So it can work. It really does work for the people. Then I mean, if there's something that's blatantly missing a law that would be really beneficial, and the chance that everybody says actually, that is great. We really want that. Then it can go up, and then it has the potential to go to a referendum, and people can vote on it, and then it becomes law. How do you take the situation we're in now, where are we looking for another Napoleon Bonaparte to come in and basically, or do we need a civil war? Because when was the last 1685? I think, wasn't it that we had that? Well, that was the last pitched battle.
Revolution. That was a revolution. Yeah.
Yeah, that's unnecessary because you already went along with all the lies. You're just not realizing that they were all lies yet. You're looking at it as education, nutrients, intelligence. You're thinking of everything that we live our lives by as these things, when it's all opposite of that. Because everything has been a lie.
Yeah. So. Do we, how do we change the system that we have to anything else? Because I'm sure that they're going to hold on to power as long as they want.
Oh, absolutely. And it's down to us in the end. But as I wrote to you, Lord Dicey, okay, who was he's one of the greatest constitutional lawyers England has had, or Britain, and he wrote in the Victorian era a book called an introduction to the study of the law of the Constitution. And this book ended up being so powerful. 2 years after it was published, Gladstone was waving it around in Parliament and quoting from it for the changes that he wanted. So that book became one of the authorities within the Constitution, because the Constitution is basically based around statute law, common law, and these authorities and some other items as well. But one of the authorities now is Dicey's book. So he's seen as being the guy who is the premier constitutional lawyer, from the past. And what he wrote in support of the referendum. He said the referendum is the only way. What do you say now? It's the only check on the predominance of party. So it's the only way we can control them, and it's got to be. It means that things get tested in the basically the court of public opinion. So that's how he saw it working. In that it controlled the parties, and it gave the people the chance, and it shows that it's got the sanction of the electors. So in other words, when you've got an important act coming up, you will have had this referendum on it, and that showed that when it goes to the king for his assent, he knows he's not getting some ropey regulation, from Tony Blair or whoever, Boris, whatever. It's actually something that has passed the people.
Yes.
So he's actually seeing laws that are coming to him then after this is introduced. Okay. So now what's important as well, of recent years, Lord Sumption, who's recently retired from the Supreme Court, he said that in constitutional terms, our constitution is very adaptable and it can be easily amended. He said, in fact, you'd think you need to have a referendum, or if you think you need both houses, you don't. After the Parliament Act, I think it was 1910, all you need is the House. Now, how do you get the House to vote on it? Yeah, because the Commons, just the House of Commons. Well, if you think about it, if the Tories are all looking down the barrel of a gun, and I mean this electorally, which is what we're looking at fairly soon, as we all know. Now, you've got to think the Canadian Progressive Conservative Party, I think it was in 1993, they went into the election, they were the government, and they had 156 seats, and after that election, there were two left.
Wow.
154 gone. So this is what these people are looking at right now, in my opinion. So, I think, obviously, what we need to do is get people motivated to push their MP to go for the hybrid system, okay? Because, the parties will be maintained. You still need people to run parliament. You still need laws to be promulgated. You still need representatives to meet with other governments, blah, 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 yeah? So the parties are there, and this still exists in Switzerland. But here's another kicker for you, Richard. If you're a Swiss MP, you only work 12 weeks of the year.
Wow.
They do 4 3-week sessions, that's it.
Yeah.
But they only get paid a daily rate, and they have no secretaries. Because,
Blimey.
yeah, they've got normal jobs.
Oh, see.
Yeah, no, they're not. It's not a padded job. No, they're real.
Do they have surgeries in the way that our MPs do, in which they're sort of answering all the queries that people might have and helping them with planning permission and things, all the sort of minor things that they have to do?
What they've done is a lot of the kind of political issues are pushed out. The point is, you see, it's about localization,
right,
where the power goes down, and you only maintain in the government with the MPs the defence and other major foreign affairs, all of these issues, and some structural and infrastructure requirements, and they'll be covered by the government, the railway or whatever. So they'll coordinate with all the cantons over these major issues that affect the whole country. But otherwise, education system goes down to the cantons. Now, everyone in the canton can then vote on what type of education system they want. Now, so there's 26 cantons, and I think there's 26 different education systems. You might think, oh, this is chaos. This is madness. But the education system in Switzerland, believe it or not, the WEF says it's the best education system in the world. Right. It has that influence. Because
I'm not sure I necessarily believe anything the WEF says, but mind you. But
I know, that's interesting though, isn't it? And they're not alone. It's very highly regarded around the world. I'm just making the point that someone who's looking at, at that level globally can't avoid saying it's a very good system. So the kids go to school there, and they have a slightly different way of being educated. But that's what the Catholic people want in their canton mainly, or the Protestants in theirs, or the Italian speakers in the Italian area.
So it varies for what we would have as a county for county, then.
Right.
So that people in that county can vote for just what's good for their area. Whereas if you're, say, so I'm down in Sussex, but if you were up in Yorkshire or Northumberland, they would be voting perhaps because, I don't know, the terrain is slightly different. It may favour that actually kids go to school in the afternoons or whatever it might be, so that they can affect that it's not one size fits all.
I gotta delete this video. This is Candace Owens part 7, and it's heavily pixeled. I don't know why. Really weird. Let's go over here.
Yeah, exactly. You know, people do vary in their culture, even around the country, obviously.
Right.
You have dialects, different ways of thinking, different industries might even,
Yeah.
If you're to big farming, rural area, you might want the schools run a bit differently to one where you want all these high-tech, because there's going to be a lot of high-tech jobs, in London or Manchester, whatever.
Get the kids back on the land.
Yeah.
Scaring crows like they used to do.
Yeah. Get them out there, get some
bit of fresh air, yeah. Pick up the stones, scare the crows, don't eat the crops, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, no, but I get what you. So that's really that's really interesting. There's a lot of common sense in that. How do you equate? Because I often hear people saying, well, one of the problems with a referendum is it's a bit like mob rule. If you take the Brexit one, it was 49-51. It was like, well, there's a large percentage who didn't win. Who might feel they were disaffected in whatever way you vote. So how, so it's like just one vote over the 50% suddenly makes it a thing. But you still have perhaps 49 people a little bit disgruntled. Does that?
Well, the point is there, when you look at the parties, you can get the same situation in Parliament where you've got a small majority. You're saying, oh, those 2, 5, 10, 15 MPs, whatever it might be, are swaying it. Oh, that's hardly fair then. It's the same thing. Okay, but who voted for them? All right, each party may get 20, 30% of the actual national vote, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
You might get 51%, or say you've got 40% of the winning vote, but how many people actually voted is another thing. So you've still got a low number of people. I think it was Cameron's was in the 20s, his actual percentage of the country that voted for him. So there's no majority there.
No, I'm agreeing with you there, absolutely. I think that system stinks. I just wondered if in your referendum, because it's a cut-off in the middle, rather than perhaps you said, well, you've got to get 70%, because then that's a bigger majority of people who are with you, rather than the, and it's 30% rather, who lose out, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think that the problem with that is that you don't get decisions at all.
Right, okay.
You're not going to get a decision, so it's about motivating the vote to get out, and that's what these signature people are doing. And it's at that stage you find out.
I know it's got big square pixels all the way up until right here, so I might as well not even bother with it until right here. 20 minutes in.
If there's enough people interested.
Right, yeah.
And because then even when you get it goes to a national referendum, they generally, they're more unlikely to be supported than they are to be supported. But it's like anything in life, Richard, when you're in a relationship, it's knowing that you've been heard, as I'm sure, your lady tell you, it's being heard. Yeah.
You're not listening to me. You're not listening to me. I'm so sorry. What did you say again?
That's right. So it's the same in politics. We're not being heard.
No. And therefore we get so disgruntled. And of course, people don't engage with it because they just think, what's the point?
Correct. Now, when did you last hear of a mob attacking anybody in Switzerland? When were the banks attacked? When were the police attacked? It's a very stable country because people are heard and because they have this opportunity to speak.
Right.
There are some, there's some good books on this. There's this fella here. He's written a very good book.
Here we go.
Swiss book. And that book basically.
What's his name? Deacon Booze.
Dickon Booze. Okay.
Dickon Booze.
Yeah. And he's a Welsh fellow who went over there. and he lives in Switzerland now, and he can't speak highly enough of it. And he's not alone, obviously, in that. But it's a good book because he's the one I learned a lot about the system in there as well. But he talks about life in general. But he says the Swiss enjoy the voting, they enjoy taking part, because who wants to be involved here now? It's very acrimonious, but again, part of that is this is the elites keeping us separate. They want us split off left and right, keeps it nice and simple. I might have a red tie, but I'm not a Labour man, But the point is, this is what they want us to be split, and they want us to be controlled that way.
Yes.
So the parties, okay, there's a very famous book called Political Parties, written by Robert Michaels, and he had studied the socialist parties in Germany in the early 1900s, and he came out with this understanding that the parties are run by a tiny group in the end, and it's called the iron law of oligarchy. This is what he came out with, and this is over 100 years ago. Now they all know this stuff. The elite have been, when you look at them, they're very good, at speaking. But Starmer was Oxford Union man as well. The Oxford Union is a debating society. All the Etonians. Why have we had? Is it 40% of our prime ministers have been Etonians?
Yeah.
They've just spent £18 million building a debating hall in Eton. It was about 2015 they built it. But they've been doing this for generations. They understand the power of someone like Boris, who can cajole you with a bit of fun into doing what they want. And vote for me. That's all it is. As you and I know, it's all about likability. That's all politics is. It's a game show. But then on top of that, as you've seen recently, it's also nudge units pushing people into thinking a certain way and turning people against each other. Okay? And I thought we were a nation, you hear, it's one nation. Well, it's one nation when we all get to vote, isn't it, routinely? Now, in Switzerland, for instance, they vote about 4 times a year. That's it. So they have these referendums, but it works out about 4 times. But a lot of them do it by post. They have a secure system for their voting. They're very concerned about digital voting, and so they're looking at that carefully. But they had it and they dropped it, but because they weren't using the blockchain, okay? Because our group that I'm in, we've got some excellent people on board, and at the moment we're looking at producing or providing a system for voting online. Okay, so you'll have it as an app on your phone even. Now, believe it or not, in the European Union, there were citizens' initiatives, and they built a platform for this. There is a direct democracy platform on the European Union, but it's not something they made much noise about, funnily enough, because the parties know this is like the sword of Damocles hanging over their head. That's it. Of course, once the people go, hang on a minute, the Swiss have got it right. Why are we letting these parties carry on as they are? And I wrote to my MP, and I said to him, I support direct democracy. What are your thoughts on it? He wrote back to me and said, constitutionally, there are problems with it. At that time, I hadn't, because I found another big book, which is another one for your viewers maybe, is this one, which is Democracy on Demand.
Democracy on Demand, Holding Power to Account. That looks a good book.
It's a very good book. It's by a Manchester University professor. Okay.
Are they easy to read?
Yeah, this one in particular. Yeah, this one's a nice, easy read, and this one's an interesting read because it's more like it's a tour of Switzerland with politics thrown in, industry thrown in, way of life thrown in. So
right. I'll have to. I'll make a note of them at the end from you, and then I'll put the link in the description so people can check them out.
Just for one other one, then, while we're doing it, then.
Whilst we're doing the book review.
That's why.
Here we go.
Yeah. Let the
people rule. How direct democracy can meet the populist challenge.
Well, it was pretty much a waste of a video because it's a remaster. I've already remastered it. That's why it looks so shitty. It's a heavily pixeled remaster.
Yeah. And this is an excellent one for any of your American viewers, all right? Because American